Core Web Vitals is it's just the foundation for it's just the entry level thing to get into the SEO game. Because at the end of the day, if you think about it, every single website, if every, let's say 95% of websites have amazing core web vitals, amazing scores. Well, what happens? Well, then it no longer becomes any unique value at all, because if everyone has it, then everyone's right here. So what's going to be the difference between website A and website B if they have perfect scores in core web vitals? Well, obviously there has to be other variables, other factors, because otherwise Google's not going to be able to determine what should rank. And remember, this is all about rankings, and it is about competition. So Google is using different variables, different ranking factors to determine who should be above each other. So at the end of the day, just having a fast loading website and a good user experience, that's just like baseline SEO. Like, it's just an expectation at this point. So once you've done that, the person, I think it was Suzanne in the group, who said that she got like a 94% or a 94 score on the core web vitals. If she gets it up to a 95 or a 96, nothing will change as far as organic search traffic, because at that point, she's already way above the average, that it's just not going to make any difference. It's going to have incremental differences, if any at all. So what really matters, once we've established that foundation of good page loading speed, good user experience, now we're going to start talking about the things that really have a huge impact. And so these next couple slides, I'm going to focus on one factor, which you guys know I love, is content, because content is the thing that makes a difference. It is the literal lead domino that makes the difference in every SEO campaign. Because if you think about it, doesn't matter how fast your website loads, doesn't matter how good your user experience is. It actually doesn't even matter how good your links are if your content isn't actually good. None of that will matter. Like, you could have the fastest loading website on the planet, but if your content is garbage, nothing is going to work. So the content is what matters. It really is the difference. Now, of course, you could have terrific content and a really poor user experience, and that will cause problems. But that's why we need, at the foundation, we have the fast loading website and the good user experience. Then from there, now we're going to start talking about content. So the thing I want to talk about today, if I can get my computer to work, create a content moat. So this is something I think about like all the time. And it's not just when it comes to blog content, but it also applies to YouTube content. It applies to Twitter posts. It applies to LinkedIn. It applies to any content that you're creating online. You should always be thinking about your content moat. And so what do I mean by that? So I basically stole this concept from Warren Buffett. And Warren Buffett, if you know who he is, the famous investor, whenever he's thinking about what companies Berkshire Hathaway should invest in, he's thinking about, does this company have some sort of moat, a strategic advantage that would make it difficult for other companies to come in and beat them? So like, for example, if we look in the SEO industry, like SEMrush, who just went public, it would be very difficult for someone to start a company and compete with SEMrush. It would be very, very hard, because they've invested millions and millions of dollars into their software. So, and they have just a massive moat when it comes to even their online presence too. So, these are things that Warren Buffett would be looking at. He would never invest in SEMrush, by the way. He only invests in really undervalued companies. But the point is the concept is that, what are the unique strategic advantages that are going to make it really, really hard for a business to compete with another business? So in the case of SEO, how can we create content that makes it really difficult for someone else to copy us or replicate us? So things that are easy to replicate are how-to stuff. So for example, I created, a long time ago, I created how to build backlinks. Well, I dominated for a very long time. But what happened is companies like MailChimp come in and take my content and rewrite it. And then my content becomes basically rendered useless. And the reason is because it's just how-to content. It doesn't have any unique differentiation. It's very easy to replicate. So ever since that happened, you'll notice like my content, I very rarely publish content really at all. But when I do, it's always with a weird, unique angle. So I'm going to talk about a few of these angles. But ultimately, we need to always be thinking about like when you're going to create an SEO content asset or a YouTube video or whatever, what can we do to make this really, really hard to replicate? And so here are a few things that we can do. Unique, unique, unique. And this is huge because the more unique it is, the harder it is to replicate. Because if you do things that are just abnormal, it just becomes very, very hard for someone to do it. And then they just look and they're like, you know what? That's probably not worth it. So, like, for example, I have a blog post about keyword research services. I could have easily just published one of those generic, like affiliate type of blog posts where they list out the 7 keyword research services that they've actually probably never even used. And just by doing Google searches, they just list out the 7 top keyword research services just based on picking the top 7 that are ranking. So that's the type of stuff that most people do. What I did is I actually found every keyword research service and I bought every single one, and I analyzed them from both a quantitative and a qualitative perspective to find out which one was actually good. I did real independent research and made it 100% unique. So now when you look at best keyword research services and you look at what's ranking, mine is clearly let's say the black sheep or the unicorn or the purple cow that stands out among everything else. So long term, I know that page will beat everyone else until someone does a case study that's way bigger than mine, which is certainly possible. But I know that I've created a little bit of a moat that makes it difficult for people to even really want to try because no one wants to invest money. That's what it comes down to. So uh, looking for those unique angles and spending a lot of time thinking about like, okay, everyone who's ranking on the first page has these generic blog posts. What can I do that's going to be just like radically different? And that's what we should try to do because I love the concept of the skyscraper. I think it teaches people a lot of good things. Hey, you found a keyword and now we're going to try to create something that's longer and deeper and better. But for me, it's much easier to create something that's radically different than try to create something that's better, because trying to create something that's better, it typically just becomes a race to the bottom, and it just becomes a race to see who can, produce the biggest word count. And it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work long term, and it doesn't create a moat at all. So here are a couple things you can do to create a moat and not let people copy you as easily. Unique data and research, and I'm going to be showing you a few examples here, like 5 examples, but unique data and research is huge. And that's always my go-to. Like whenever I'm thinking about it, I'm like, what kind of data can I collect for this topic? And sometimes it's not possible, but sometimes you can do unique data where you actually, like in the case of the keyword research one, I went and actually got my own unique data. But sometimes you can just pull data from other resources and create a curated piece of content from all that data. Now, that's easier to replicate, right? Because someone can just go and collect the same data as you and create a very similar blog post. So like when you look at healthline.com, all of their content, it's extremely data driven and it's good. It's very high quality. But the thing is, it doesn't have a moat because I can easily go and replicate it. I can just take their content, take the exact resources that they used, and then go basically just slightly change the content and put it on my site. So there's no moat when it comes to that. The only reason why they continue to dominate is because their website is so strong. So, but when most people don't have the luxury of a DR85 website. So the way you do it is you have to get a little more scrappy. You have to find ways to get that unique data to start to build a moat for your website and your content. Next one is tools and software. It just makes sense. It costs a lot of money and a lot of time to build tools and software. So therefore, most people are not willing to invest a lot of time and not willing to invest a lot of money. So your moat alone is just in that. So, and then if you create something that's actually good, it's a double whammy there. So that's why I like tools like Ahrefs and SEMrush and Moz. Their link profiles are so incredibly strong because their company, their tool that they offer is inherently a form of link bait. So they get links without trying. Like if you look at SEMrush's like link profile, they're just constantly getting links all the time just because they're SEMrush, not because they created some sort of epic piece of content. It's just because they have a really useful tool. So next is design. And a lot of people underestimate this, but just investing in content design or unique images can help you create a moat too. Like a lot of people, they go and find, stock photos and they throw them in their content. It's just lazy. We shouldn't be doing that. We should make it unique. And ironically, I just grabbed this photo from Google that's on this slide. But if I was creating a blog post, I would never do this. So what I would do is I would take this, if I was talking about this in a blog post, and I would create a unique background for it that looks similar to my website. And you can just use Canva for this. And I've talked about this a lot. You can take a stock photo, put it into Canva, export it, put it on your site, and now it's actually a unique image. So very simple, but thinking about design is one way. And there's an example here that I'll be showing you. But design is one way to develop that moat too. And then expert level depth. So this is something that is very hard to replicate, no matter how hard they try. So like, for example, I just published a video on YouTube that was actually a coaching session from maybe a couple weeks ago. And it's just me like talking about SEO stuff, talking about like a complete SEO process for growing an affiliate website. Well, the nuances and the expert insights that I can give are difficult to replicate because the only way to replicate it is to have the same experience. So the only people that can really replicate are the people that have similar experience as I do. And that's thinking about in your field, like that's what you need to be thinking about is, there's probably only a small pool of people who can really replicate you on the expert level. So that's one advantage you can really go after. And then on top of it, if you combine your expert level content along with just like you as an individual, no one can copy you, right? Like there's only one of me. So the way that I deliver content, the way that I teach, the way that I communicate is completely unique to me. There's no one else like it. And that's the same for you guys too. Like no one else is going to do it the way that you do it. So automatically, just by you showing up, it's automatically unique in that way. So, and that took me a while to realize that, but that's huge. It's really huge. And then the last one is just weird angles. Like just try to like do weird stuff. Like I know it's a strange thing, but you should really just like look like what's a totally weird thing that I could do for this keyword, and just really try to tap into that creativity, because that's where a lot of magic can really happen. So a couple examples here. First one from Backlinko. The funniest thing happened, I think on Tuesday, but we send emails almost around the same time. So he usually sends, and this is, I study people who are in my vertical. So I know he sends emails around 10 a.m. CST on Tuesday. And that's just because data proves that Tuesday is one of the best days for sending emails. So he aligns with that. I also like to send emails on Tuesday because of that data. So typically, because I know that he sends them at 10, I typically send them at like 11, or I'll send them at 9 because I don't want us competing for open rates. But anyway, he sent this post about core web vitals. And then like 2 minutes later, I sent one for, core web vitals equals dumb. And like the inbox is like back to back. And he's probably like, I guess he's copying me. But it was just a coincidence because we both send on the same day. But anyway, this is a perfect example what he did. This is unique data. And I can guarantee Brian probably spent at least a month or maybe 2 months building this case study. So like, you got to ask yourself, like, are you willing to spend 2 months creating a case study? And that's really what makes a difference. Like, it's really hard to replicate this piece of content. You have to go and study 208,000 web pages. You have to organize all of that and then distill it into a blog post. That's a very, very difficult task. So, Brian understands that, and he does it terrifically well. One of the best at building out case studies with unique data. And usually he'll just partner with someone else who collects the data, and then he delivers it and presents it. But still, like, take what he does and replicate it in different industries, because I can tell you, no one is doing this level of research and unique data in other industries. Like the SEO industry is far above other industries as far as content quality, like leaps and bounds above other industries. So you can take stuff that works well in the SEO industry and apply it in other verticals, and it will work really, really well. And it actually won't even need to be as deep because no one is doing this in other verticals. So definitely a moat here. This one is really interesting. I like this one because this is from YouTube. And if you're thinking about like what's a way to create unique content on YouTube, this guy Sam Newton, he's not a big YouTuber. He only has like 100,000 subs, but his subscriber count went through the roof when he published this video, and it's about Peter McKinnon, who does have a lot of subscribers. I think Peter McKinnon maybe has like 3 or 4 million subscribers. But anyway, he had barely any subscribers. He published this really unique, awesome video that's just kind of like a funny video saying he's the new Peter McKinnon. And his subscriber count shot through the roof. So it's like the classic 80-20 situation. You know, 80% of your results are the product of 20% of your efforts. So his one video produced almost all of his subscribers. So, this is once again, if you watch this video, and I highly recommend you do, just so you can see how much production value and how much effort and time you can tell went into it. Once again, a content moat. It's not easy to replicate this video. So these are things you need to be thinking about. And you can just tell, like when you see a good piece of content, you know that they've spent a lot of time and effort and planning. And especially you really know it when you've gone through that process yourself and you know how difficult it actually can be. So it's very easy to spot it. Now, number 3 is Basecamp. And I would highly recommend studying their content because one thing they do really well, and I was talking about this earlier, is it's very unique and it's very specific to them. It's not specific to anyone else. So everything they talk about is specific to what their business does. So it really can't be replicated ultimately because it's just what they do. No one else does it. It's unique. So they're always talking about the different policies in their company and just the way they grow. And it's always unique. And that's why when you look at their content, they've acquired so many backlinks and people, admire them as thought leaders, in the business world. So, and that's just because their content is so different than everyone else's. This is one, I actually have this in the academy, I think in Gotcha SEO Academy 2.0, in the third module, I have all these different content blueprints. But this one here is really awesome. It's like this like crazy, new devil's dictionary. And it's just a custom design, custom functioning page that's totally unique. And The Verge created it. They probably invested several thousands of dollars into this piece of content. And the result, the proof is in the pudding. If you go and look at the link profile on this particular page, they have thousands and thousands of links. So they've definitely gotten a return on their investment from that just by the link profile that they've gotten from it alone. And then the last one here is these lists that are constantly updating are really, really powerful. So like Forbes, this is probably their number one, other than maybe their homepage, this is probably their number one most linked to piece of content. And it's just because it's constantly being updated every year. They're constantly updating it. And of course, the moat here is huge. Like Forbes is known for having this list. So when you think of like, okay, who are the top billionaires? You go to Forbes. Maybe you'll go to Inc. too, but like still, this is a moat because it's very difficult to replicate them. And most people would never even really want to try regardless. So just thinking of these different ideas to build a moat is, I just can't tell you and express how important it is. It can really make a big difference. So that's all I have, guys. Pretty simple today, but I just wanted to cover that concept because it really does make a big difference. So you guys have any questions, comments, ideas? I'm all ears. And have you guys tried doing this stuff yourself? Honestly, it's definitely not easy. It requires a lot of effort, but it really does make a huge difference. All right, guys. Well, I guess we'll reconvene on Tuesday. Simon asked one question here. Besides from the content, what do you think should be the minimum score on core web vitals? I'm a classic 80-20 guy. So I think if you can get above that 80% mark, you'll probably be fine. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we just need to be better than the average because Google's not going to they're not going to implement any policy that's going to destroy a bunch of websites. They would just really destroy the bottom half of whatever the average is. So like, if the average core web vital score is like a 60, anyone who's in like the 10 to 30 range will probably get hit, but anyone who's in the average or a little bit above average, nothing really is going to change for them more than likely. But it's just generally a good policy to try to get it as high as you can, just so you cover your bases, like just so you can sleep at night knowing that your website loads as fast as possible and has a good user experience. It just really to make you feel secure about your situation more than anything. But yeah, I mean, if you can go as high as possible, then it's only going to benefit mainly. Michael asks, who will get hit the most in your opinion with Google's new update? Any website that just isn't willing to change ultimately. There's still it's amazing because like SSL certificates have been a ranking factor. This is a perfect example of one that like Google says is going to be a ranking factor, right? And what it did is it forced everyone to get on SSL. But believe it or not, there's still a lot of websites that don't have SSL certificates. So this is a part of their strategy to make the web better. So they kind of say like, hey, this is going to be a ranking factor, but in reality, it's more of like this is just like the entry to get into the game more than anything. So it's not going to be, like I said, if everyone has an SSL certificate, it's not a ranking factor because everyone has it. So therefore, it doesn't really move the needle. So it's really just, if you want to survive, you need to have it, but it's not going to take you from position 10 to 1 just because you installed an SSL certificate. David said, I'm a bit daunted by the amount of work needed for content moats. Any ideas for less work moats, perhaps less than 8 hours? Yeah, I mean, the thing is like it's all relative, right? So like me creating a moat in the SEO industry, I know I need to invest 40 to 100 hours more than likely into something that's insanely good. However, if I'm in, underwater basket weaving, I probably don't need to spend that much time. I can probably spend 4 hours because I know that the competition is much lower. So it's really all on the basis of competition. So if the competition is lower, you don't need to invest as much. In fact, that wouldn't be smart at all to overinvest when you don't need to. So the keyword research process that I've laid out in the new training, like it's designed to make sure that you're not over investing in your content, which is a mistake that you can make. And I've made that mistake many times. I've gone way overboard with my content out of the gate and then realized like, hey, I didn't really need to do that. So then I scale it back and it does just as well. And it proves a point that like you can go overboard many times. So you got to try to find that balance. But yeah, it's always going to be dependent on the industry. And of course, I don't know what industry you're operating in. So Noah asked, where do you find recordings to re-listen to your whole presentation? It's in the back end under the coaching section. You should see it. I'll check and see if you have access. You should have access to it though. So let me know. You can just email support@gotchaseo.com and we'll help you out. Christopher asked, when you say it takes a month, do you mean 160 hours of work per moat? That was my question. Oh, like I said, it's dependent. It's dependent on the vertical. Like I've spent on some pieces of content, I've spent a month, I've spent 2 months. It just depends. But that's like I said, because in the SEO industry, the standards are elevated so high. I'm really operating against the best of the best as far as content creation. There are people who literally specialize in content. Trying to beat them is a daunting task on its own. So, but when you start to step outside of the national level and you're just competing maybe on the local or different levels, or you're competing in a completely different vertical, the standards get dropped much more. So you do not need that, level of investment. Next question is, how do you get good SEO clients from the USA? That is the $1 million question, right? I always tell people that you need to either niche down, either on the vertical level, niche down on the local level, or even niche down on the service level. So instead of being a full service SEO agency, pick one subset of SEO and do that really well and make that your front end offer. So like, it's difficult to compete on full service SEO because you're competing against huge agencies who have practically unlimited budgets to destroy you. So they're just going to outspend you. So the way to beat them, the way to get in the back door is to create really focused, productized offerings. And one thing that you can do is you could literally just offer like a keyword research service, a really premium, high quality keyword research service. You start to become known as the guy who does keyword research. But really, what that's acting as is a front end offer so that then you can sell the full service on the back end. So that's what people don't realize. Like, oh man, I don't want to niche down because then I can't do full service. But no, you can, because you sell that front end offer. Much easier to sell front end offer, by the way, than to sell full service. And then boom, on the back, you say, hey, if you want us to help you actually go and rank for these keywords, then let's talk about doing an actual full service campaign. See, that transition is much easier than saying, hey, give me $2,500 a month for 12 months, dude. So it's a much different transition. Getting them to invest with you, getting them to trust you makes a big difference. So that's why I try to get people to think about how they can productize, try to break that service down. If you don't want to break the service and you just want to focus on pure agency, full service, then you got to pick a niche. You absolutely need to pick a high value niche and become known in that niche as the guy. Go and study Chris Dreyer. Like, he does it exceptionally well. He just focuses on personal injury lawyers, which is literally a subset of law. And honestly, there aren't many people who do it better than he does. So if you just replicated him in a different vertical, it would be pretty hard to not achieve really good results, to be honest. So, so Graham said, if you were in a niche, say law, surely this means that you were only so many times you're going to create a content moat before you're competing with yourself for the various clients. Yeah. That becomes challenging for sure. But it's just a matter of creativity, right? So if you're only, like in the case of Chris only doing personal injury law, he'd probably want to start focusing on local types of data points. So like personal injury data points in Los Angeles, for example. So you can really start to get super granular about the data, and in fact, that actually is a moat within itself, is getting like really granular data, because people love to reference data. So if you had like personal injury statistics in, let's say, Glendale, California, like you're not going to find a whole lot of content, something that granular. But because it's so granular, first of all, you'll be able to dominate very easily. And then second of all, it will become a reference point for people, which of course helps you get links. So, so Simon asked, do you think using the Haro technique for link building would be a good idea for a website targeting German organic traffic? Most of the sites on Haro are USA based, so it's not really a match, but the links would be unique, I guess. Yes, I think it is worth it, but I would also be focusing on getting German based links as the priority. But the thing you got to realize is, like, there are a lot of websites that are US based websites. So it's not abnormal for you to get links from USA based websites. That's just totally fine. Quality doesn't change depending on what part of the world you're in. If I got a link from a really high quality news website in Germany to my website, I'd think that was awesome because it's still high quality. So, or if I had an SEO blog in France linking to my SEO blog in the US, it's still high quality. So, so yeah, that's not something that's concerning at all. But I would focus on getting geo-targeted links as a high percentage of your profile. That's important too. All right. Well, next Tuesday, I'll figure out if I'm able to, if I'm going to be on paternity leave. We'll find out soon enough. Let's see. Oh, let's see. Graham's, no, I didn't see your question. Let's see here. Graham asked, have you any advice for core web vitals for platforms such as Shopify, where there's only so much room to change the back end? Yeah, Shopify is tough, really, really tough. I know there are certain plugins you can use on Shopify to help with that. I think there are some newer things happening, but yeah, you got to try to work within the confines of what's possible, right? So you're probably not really ever going to get to the point in which you would for like a WordPress based website. But like I said, the goal is just to get above average, and then you're pretty much in that safe zone. So yeah, you may not be able to get that 95%, but if you're working with a client who is on Shopify, you just need to make that clear and say, hey, you're on Shopify, so there just really aren't many solutions to get you to that level. So yeah, and exactly. Yeah. And a lot of people are using Shopify. So the competitors are probably using the same exact platform. So, it's like I said, it's all relative. Sanket asked, any good SEO plugins you can recommend besides Yoast? These SEO plugins are a dime a dozen, man. Like you can use Yoast, you can use All-in-One SEO Pack, you can use Rank Math. They're all the same. Honestly, it's funny because like now these days, I only use SEO plugins just to be able to put the title and the meta description and then be able to have the no index functionality. But other than that, like I'm not using like their mechanism for optimizing pages because I just use Surfer. So Surfer has basically replaced all of these plugins. So it's whichever one you like the most ultimately, but it's not going to make a difference as far as your performance. So, it doesn't matter if you have Yoast or All-in-One or Rank Math. That's not going to be what makes a difference. So people get wrapped up in that stuff. Okay, guys. Well, cool. Good session. And hopefully I'll be back Tuesday. And if not, you'll know why. All right. I'll see you guys later. Good talking to you.